let's talk about a feeling. A feeling that I'm willing to bet a lot of us know really well. It's this sense that you're playing a game that feels, well, rigged. A game that's just about impossible to win. Right? It's that constant nagging pressure to just do more, be more, achieve more. It feels like you're on a treadmill that's just getting faster and faster, and there's no off-ramp anywhere in sight. And look, this isn't just something in our own heads. This feeling is so big, so widespread, it's actually shaping our culture. Just think about the words we hear all the time. Hustle culture makes the grind sound like a virtue. But then you have these huge pushbacks, like the Great Resignation and quiet quitting, which show just how many people are desperately trying to find another way. And bubbling right under the surface of all of it, this relentless engine of social comparison, just fueling the whole machine. So if we're going to figure out how to get off this treadmill, we first have to understand the myths that are keeping us running in the first place. And the biggest, most powerful one of all is the myth of the self-made person. You know, it's fascinating how much of a firestorm this one headline created. When Forbes put Kylie Jenner on their cover and called her self-made, a lot of people just went, wait a minute. They pointed out she comes from an incredibly famous, incredibly wealthy family. This one little quote just perfectly captures our cultural obsession with this idea that success comes purely from individual grit and nothing else. So why are we so obsessed with this story? Well, psychology actually has a name for it, the fundamental attribution error. It's basically a mental shortcut. Our brains are wired to automatically assume that what people do is a direct reflection of who they are inside. And in the process, we tend to completely ignore the situation or the context they're in. And this is just a brilliant illustration of how that bias works. So imagine your professor bursts into class late, he's sweating, his papers are flying everywhere. What's your first automatic thought? It's probably the one on the left. Wow, he's a disorganized person. That's a judgment about his personality. But we almost never jump to the possibility on the right, the situation. Maybe he was just in a car accident. We put way too much weight on personality and not nearly enough on circumstance. And that one little error is the bedrock of the entire self-made myth. This leads us right into our second myth. And honestly, this is probably the one that causes most of us the most day-to-day stress. The comparison trap. I absolutely love this metaphor because it explains so much. Our sense of how we're doing in life isn't based on some objective universal ruler. Nope, it's based entirely on who's in our immediate pond. If you're a big frog in a small pond, you feel amazing. But you take that exact same frog with the exact same talent and drop them into the ocean, suddenly they might feel totally small and inadequate, even though nothing about them has actually changed. So the real question is, how do we deal with this? For years, the answer we were given was self-esteem. The goal was to feel special, to be above average. But you see the problem, right? By definition, it's impossible for everyone to be above average. It's a zero-sum game that can just lead to conflict and fragile egos. But there's a much more resilient alternative, self-compassion. The goal here isn't to be better than anyone else. It's simply to be kind to yourself, especially when you feel like you're falling short. It gives you a stable sense of worth that doesn't go away just because a bigger frog swam into your pond. And all of this brings us to the third myth, the one that really powers hustle culture. It's this deep-seated idea that the struggle itself, the grind, is somehow morally good no matter what it actually produces. This was such a fascinating study. Okay, so you've got two workers, Justin and Mark. Now look at their output. It's identical. Same number of widgets per hour, same exact quality. The only difference is the effort. For Justin, this work is a breeze. For Mark, it's a huge, painful struggle. So the researchers asked a really simple question. Given that their results are exactly the same, which one of these guys do you think is more moral? Who has better character? And the results were just crystal clear. Overwhelmingly, people said Mark, the one who struggled, was more moral. This is a real thing called effort moralization. We have this unconscious bias that makes us see struggle as a virtue. We actually reward effort, even when it's totally ineffective, which goes a long way to explain why we glorify the grind, even when all it leads to is burnout with no better results. Okay, so we've spent some time tearing down the myths that keep us stuck. Now for the good part. How do we actually get out of the trap? Let's talk about the antidotes, starting with that poison of comparison. The direct counterattack to that pain of envy and social comparison is this really beautiful concept called mudita. It's the idea of sympathetic joy. It means you actively train yourself to feel genuinely happy for other people's successes. So instead of seeing their win as your loss, you learn to actually share in their good fortune. Now, to even begin to practice mudita, you have to make a really fundamental shift in your thinking. You've got to move from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. The scarcity mindset believes success is a limited pie. It says, if they get a slice, well, that's one less slice for me. But the abundance mindset says, hey, that's great they got a slice of pie. We can always bake more pies. One creates envy, the other creates possibility. So how do you actually build this muscle? It's a practice, not a switch you flip. It starts with just noticing when envy shows up and not beating yourself up for it. Then you try to reframe someone else's success, not as a threat, but as inspiration. From there, you can literally practice by silently wishing strangers well in your head. And finally, you work on cultivating that genuine, unselfish joy for the wins of the people closest to you. All right, our final antidote is this incredibly powerful metaphor for dealing with all that internal noise that keeps us stuck. The self-doubt, the criticism, the fear. It's a concept from therapy, and it's called driving your own bus. Okay, so just picture this. You are driving a bus. You, your core self, your consciousness, you are the driver. The destination, where you're trying to go, is a life that's guided by your most important values. And all those negative, critical, unhelpful thoughts in your head, they're just a bunch of loud, annoying passengers in the back. And man, these passengers can be really, really loud, right? They're shouting all the greatest hits from the back of the bus. They're trying to get you to stop, to turn around, to get into a big argument with them, or even try to kick them off. But here is the absolute game changer. This is the whole point. The goal is not to get the passengers to shut up. You probably can't. And trying to fight with them just means you've pulled the bus over, and you're no longer heading towards your destination. Your job isn't to silence the passengers. Your job is just to acknowledge they're there, let them yell whatever they want, and keep your hands on the wheel, driving towards what actually matters to you. It's such a powerful way to reframe everything. You don't have to win a war against your own thoughts to live a good life. You just have to choose to keep driving. Which really leaves us with a final question to take away from all this. Who or what is really driving your bus?